Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first episode of Simon's Suplexes and Slams. This is a show all about the wonderful art form, as I will call it, kind of reluctantly, of pro wrestling. I am your host, Simon Haley Jr., and while normally I would start things off by delving into this week in wrestling, whether it be Raw, SmackDown, AEW, NXT, New Japan, ROH, even indies like Northeast Wrestling or Beyond or Evolve, although Evolve doesn't exist now, whatever it may be, this episode, this one time, I want to introduce myself. My name is Simon Haley Jr. I'm a 19-year-old living in Connecticut as of now, who has grown up with wrestling my entire life. But beyond that, I am a graduate of the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I am a young, hopeful person trying to get into broadcasting and using this as a platform to get there. My dream is to enter the pro wrestling business because it is what I love. Wrestling is what I love, what I want to be a part of. And really there's a few major reasons as to why I'm into wrestling, why I am infatuated with wrestling, why I hate wrestling in some aspects, and why I love it in others. My father introduced me to wrestling when I was very young. He watched it, more so was watching WCW back when the NWO was a major power stable. Otherwise, for those unaware of the terms, a group of multiple wrestlers who all were in one alignment, whether it be babyface, which are the good guys, heels, which are the bad guys, and tweeners, which are in between good and evil. He would watch wrestling, or at least WCW, every week to make sure he followed up on the NWO, make sure he followed up on the wrestlers he liked. He had shown me before a VHS tape of him in the crowd at Survivor Series 1990. The night that The Undertaker debuted, but more importantly to me, a night that will live in a bit more infamy than people realize. On the live pay-per-view version, this cannot be found on the network, on VHS copies, on any other copy except for one taped live from the pay-per-view itself. My dad was the one who, in the crowd, stood up right in front of a camera and flipped off Hulk Hogan. Now I know this is a bit weird to say. How is that going to be infamous? How is that supposed to be controversial? Well, it was Hulk Hogan. People didn't really start hating him until 1991, 1992. 1990. It was almost rare to think that somebody would dare flip off Hulk Hogan, the American hero of the time. Yeah, my dad did it, and he has it on recording. And I will watch it occasionally and laugh because, to me, it's funny. And I think to a lot of people it would be too. Imagine you turn on pay-per-view, and not nowadays where everything's all camera cuts, and every time something happens, you see the camera shake as if it's a video game. No. Back then, where the cameras were more still, and they would get these massive shots of the crowds. So imagine you're seeing a wrestler come down, the arena is exploding in cheers, and then the camera shows a guy flipping off the wrestler coming out. It's raw. It is natural. It is why wrestling is fun. stuff like Walking Dead and Game of Thrones and what's that show on TNT now based on a book, the train thing, the name slips my mind. They advertise it way too much, but it completely slips my mind. Those shows are all scripted, just like wrestling is, but the difference is they're not natural, they're not live, they are taped in advance, they're edited, they're done perfectly, they hire top name actors to play characters. Everything is done perfectly the first time to the viewer, probably the 70th time to the actors, and everything is done with the intent of making it look as real as possible without any mess ups. Wrestling is about the complete opposite of any other TV show. They are not actors, although some of them become actors. They are pro athletes who dress up and fake fight each other. They constantly mess up. They usually are bad or are scripted, so they are bad on the microphone and how they act, how they look. Some wrestlers are naturally better than others, unlike actors, where it really comes down to almost who gets the better roles. Some wrestlers are completely wasted in their careers, while some actors some wrestlers are given better roles than they deserve. It is the exact opposite of what a movie is. Where a movie takes 70, 80 tries to do one scene, within that time frame, wrestling has about 5 matches and 4 of them suck. That's what wrestling is. You are watching people suck at something you can't do, but getting engrossed in it because you can't do it. And when I say suck, I should clarify that I don't mean that the wrestlers themselves are bad. Some of them are. Some of them absolutely are. But not all of them. They suck in a different way. It's almost like, if you remember the show Mystery Science Theater 3000, how they would riff on these B movies that are just so bad, but they're good in that exact way. That they're so bad that you have to watch. That's what wrestling is to me. It's Mystery Science Theater 3000, but instead of watching a guy try to kill another with a forklift, you watch two guys, one, say, to describe it in the worst way possible, one who's an undead wizard fighting another who used to be a Connecticut blue blood that married the boss's daughter. And you make fun of it, but you watch because they take it seriously. Every mess up, every screw up, every time that they flub a line or botch a move, they take it seriously. Sometimes they make it into storylines. AEW did it with Christopher Daniels. He messed up a move and they made an entire storyline on you're pushing 50 or you are over 50. I don't remember which it is exactly. Why are you still doing this? You should retire. That mess up was not good for you. If you do another one, you may retire because of injuries. They made it funny, but they made it matter. Instead of where people will post online, oh, somebody left a Starbucks cup in a Game of Thrones episode, and it gets brushed under the rug and forgotten, and people laugh about it. Wrestling, people laugh about it, and it's made in a story. They'll take botches and turn it into something better. Turn it into history. Turn it into ways that if you mess up so badly that you are, for example, turned into an icon like the Shockmaster. And if you haven't seen the Shockmaster, just do yourself a favor and Google it. Google the Shockmaster debuts. Whether you get wrestling or you don't, to see a man that size mess up that badly, I think anybody can laugh at. It's like the Cleveland Browns of wrestling, where something can go so wrong so fast in so many ways that it becomes a cultural icon. Even fans outside of wrestling know who the Shockmaster is just because it's that bad. They know Psycho Sid yelling out 22 in response to his car being destroyed. They know just they know the infamous Booker T promo that I cannot mention on any sort of television word for word. But they know it because why wouldn't they? To use that word on live TV, I believe on pay-per-view, how do you not know that? You have to. Not because you like wrestling, but because it's too funny. And that's why I like wrestling. Because it's stupid. Because anytime that you think something can go right, it probably won't. But when it does go right, it makes you feel happy that it did. It makes you feel proud that, hey, something for once in this company went correct. And I don't mean like, oh, it went decently, that move didn't look that good. No. I mean when it is good. When wrestling is bad, it's laughably bad. But when wrestling is good, it is better than a lot of other entertainment out there because nothing can match the passion and the excitement and the energy wrestling gives. Take a look at, we'll say, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Everyone who's seen Infinity War and Endgame think they're great movies, and rightfully so, because they are. I haven't watched them yet. I plan on watching them eventually because I know they're going to be good. But then it gives the issue of the hype. The hype complex, in a way, where something can be hyped up so much that when you watch it and it slightly doesn't live up to expectations, it feels like you wasted your time. Because you got hyped up so much that it's going to be great, that when it wasn't as good as you thought it was going to be, you feel like it was bad. With wrestling, you can hype up something all you want. You know it's going to be bad regardless. For example, looking at these wrestling figures here, I have way too many of them, so expect each episode to have a different set of them. Say, for example, there's going to be a match between Ric Flair and Terry Funk. These two guys are known to be great storytellers, they're known to be great in-ring workers, and they stink up the place. They put on a bad match, stuff doesn't go right, there's multiple mess-ups, everything just falls apart. If it was a movie, they would never work again. They would be fired on the spot, the movie would bomb, it wouldn't make any money, and they would be out of the business. In wrestling, it just becomes better. They get to keep their jobs, they probably get paid more because, unlike with a movie, they already got your money. With a movie nowadays, they basically have to sell you on the trailers, and most of the time don't work because people just stream them online. With wrestling, kind of the same way, but they don't have trailers. They have promos. That's about it. And even then, most of the promos are bad. People tune in because they already thought ahead that they were going to. And that's what they need. And that's why I like it. Because wrestling knows that it needs to be stupid to survive, and usually is really good at being stupid. Wrestling's really good at being really, really dumb and bad, but that's what makes it great. Yes, I could sit here and talk about the amazing athleticism guys like Ricochet and Will Ospreay have, the stories that guys like Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair tell, the way that story arcs. I'm not talking like a month storyline. I'm talking years and years of story being told between guys like Steve Austin and The Rock, how they're iconic. But on the flip side, when you look at a storyline deeply, you see how stupid it is. Look at, if you've watched it, current AEW, Chris Jericho versus Orange Cassidy. And really think about it for a second. This is a man who's wrestled for years and was the world champion a few months ago. now lowering himself to face off against a guy who wears jeans and sunglasses, doesn't take them off before the match, the sunglasses I mean, thankfully not the jeans, and will wrestle with his hands in his pocket and won't try for a majority of the match. And by won't try, I mean wrestlers will normally do like kicks and punches and they'll actually try to make them look good. Cassidy is like, I can't even describe it. It's just like, imagine if you have like a son or daughter and you're like doing those play punches like like these weak punches or these weak kicks just to mess with them. That's what Cassidy does to other wrestlers. He treats them like children in a sense of he's doing these weak blows but expects them to work because he's so lazy and so stupid and naive that he thinks they do work. But then it goes a step further when you listen to what Jericho says and see how he acts. How the slightest sight of Orange Cassidy drives him to rage. He will sit at the commentary table, which is basically almost the broadcast booth of the show. And if Orange Cassidy shows up, doesn't say anything, doesn't do anything. He sits down at the table, puts his feet up, and watches the rest of the show. Jericho will become upset and will yell about Cassidy doing nothing. He literally doing nothing, and it drives Jericho mad. Or Cassidy will like be brought out for some sort of argument, and Jericho doesn't do the smart thing and just attack him. He carries a baseball bat around. You know, you can do some damage with a baseball bat. No, what he does, he brings out a bag of oranges and hits them with it. Or he'll carry around a jug of orange juice and pour it on them. Just because that's what he does. He does stupid things and they work. So in Jericho's mind, he thinks, okay, well, if he's doing all these stupid things and they work for him, why can't I do the same? That's what this entire story's about. It's almost a battle of who could be more of an idiot. And yet, it makes a ton of money, and it gets people excited. Because they know that's what wrestling about. But beyond all the stupidity, it's also the violence of it. In Game of Thrones, if you see someone's head get chopped off with a sword, you know they're fine. It ain't no snuff film. They actually don't die, you know? Obviously there's the suspension of disbelief in effect, but as soon as it's done, you know, it's like, oh, okay, that character is dead. That actor is fine and probably just moving on to another TV show. Whereas wrestling, if somebody's bleeding and they shouldn't be bleeding, you know they messed up. Or, if somebody's bleeding really badly, you know that maybe, just maybe, they need medical attention. And that's what happened at WrestleMania 22 in probably my favorite match of Mania history. Between the man known as Edge, otherwise Adam Copeland, versus Mick Foley. Foley, at this point in his career, had been retired for 2 years. Before that, had been retired for 4 years. And this was about his last hurrah. His last real in-ring match. Obviously, he's done a few guest spots here and there, but this was different. This wasn't a, we're gonna sit here and wrestle. This was a, let me have one more hardcore match and let me damage myself a little bit more, because clearly losing an ear in Germany wasn't enough. And that ain't character talk. That is Mick Foley legitimately lost half an ear in Germany. You don't get that back. This ain't Deadpool where magically his limbs regrow into like these baby versions. Nah, his ear gone. And he still wrestles. He still, but even after then, is thrown off the Hell in a Cell, thrown basically 20 feet off the or out of the air, and crashes on the ground. Not once, but twice. He still gets thrown on a thumbtacks. He still gets attacked with barbed wire. Stuff supposedly humans should never come in contact with, because apparently to people they think touching barbed wire means your skin erupts in blood. Well, they're kind of true. But Foley and Edge in this match beat each other down. With barbed wire, with street signs, with steel chairs, with the environment around them, with thumbtacks. The end of the match sees them both go through a table that was lit on fire. That's how extreme the match gets. But unlike what I've talked about earlier, where everything has been bad and laughing at it, this was different. This wasn't about how bad something is or making fun of it. This was about watching two men fight. Not wrestle. And not like MMA fighting. But just fight. This felt like something where it would be seen in a John Wick film. The only difference is there's no guns. And that's the one thing I'm thankful about in wrestling, is that there's no guns, because guns make things boring. But that's a completely different thing. Here, instead of guns, you have fists and barbed wire and all this other crazy stuff that makes people go, what the heck are they doing? Or, how have people not died in the ring before? And the answer is, they have. They just haven't done it this time. But it was that match that turned me on to wrestling, because I saw how violent it was, and it led me into seeing more and more violent aspects of media. And no, it didn't turn me violent, but it turned me into a wrestling fan. Kind of one and the same, but it made me happy to watch wrestling, because I saw other people get hurt that weren't me or people I know. That's why stuff like the God, I can't think of the name. The one Johnny Knoxville starred in. That's why those movies were popular. Of people just being stupid and getting hurt. Or fail compilations where you see people like trying to do, I don't know, even if it's as simple as, okay, I'm going to tie this rope to a tree and swing off it and land in the water. Their grip slips, they land on their back right on the grass about 5 feet away from the water. That's funny. And that's what wrestling is. It's watching other people get hurt for your amusement while you don't have to do anything. And it's all people you don't know. But you do know them. I'm not saying you know the actual people like you meet them on the streets, but you know them because of their characters. You know their characters. I don't know Ric Flair, the person, but I know Ric Flair, the character. I don't think anybody knows the man named Mark Calloway, but almost everyone knows the character, The Undertaker. If there's 5 things I have to say wrestling is about, it is people getting hurt when you don't when they're not at all connected to you, it being really stupid with a bunch of mess ups and a bunch of natural reactions that shouldn't have happened, about the stories that are told within the ring, whether good or bad, about the way that it combines both politics and acting in a one really stupid sport, kinda, and about the characters. And that 4th thing is something that a few people don't like touching upon, because it combines the aspects of kayfabe and reality, which is basically how's the best way I could put this? Imagine if Negan on Walking Dead one day told the studio that makes the show, I want $150,000 more in my contract, or I'm not playing Negan. Basically gave them an ultimatum of kill off my character or give me more money. That is kind of what wrestling is. Except instead of money, it's screen time and titles. Or the reverse of an actor comes up and says, hey, this character that I don't play, I don't like because the actor that plays him I don't like as a person. Swap the actor or I leave. That's what wrestling is at times. It is a very annoying thing to listen to. And it was a lot more rampant in the 80s and 90s thanks to Hulk Hogan and Shawn Michaels and a bunch of other people. But it still happens nowadays where you'll have, I think the most recent one has been the reports that came out of AJ Styles basically saying Paul Heyman's a two-faced liar because he told him, no, I didn't try to get Gallows and Anderson fired. And then it comes out, according to other people, oh yeah, it was Paul Heyman that pushed to Vince McMahon, hey, get rid of Gallows and Anderson. They're getting $750,000 a year. Stuff like that. That's the type of politics that go into wrestling. The acting part's easy. The politicking is harder. It ruins a lot of careers, but it makes a lot of careers. Triple H is notorious for being probably one of the biggest politickers in the business. How many times he won the title or would drop it and win it a week, a month later. His infamous reign of terror, where from 2002 to 2004, there was rarely a time that you would see Triple H not either the champion or competing for the championship or in a storyline for the championship. There just wasn't a time for it. Once he got a taste of success and power, he was like every other man in the world, every other woman in the world, every other person in the world, and wanted more. Because that's almost instinctual. Some people are just better at hiding it than others. But when you're married to the boss's daughter, sometimes you don't need to hide it. You can just be, okay, this is what we're doing, and they can't do anything about it because guess what? You're related to the boss. And the boss is obviously going to favor the guy related to him than the random worker who's getting screwed over. But again, this is all just almost long-winded ways of saying wrestling kind of sucks, but it's funny. But to me, it's a bit different than that as well, because it doesn't just suck and it's funny, it's good. It's really good at being funny and at sucking, but it's also really good at doing neither of those things. It is something that is both a comedy and a drama and a horror film and an action film, and everything at once is wrestling. If you want anything, any genre of wrestling, it'll be there. You want romance? There's way too many angles of men and women, or men and men, or women and women getting together in wrestling than some people think there should be. You want action? Wrestling's all about action. If you want pure action, really, just watch independent scenes. Watch Northeast Wrestling. Watch Beyond. Watch Chaotic Wrestling. Watch the shows of like Joey Janela's Spring Break or GCW. Game Changer Wrestling, I believe that's called. And you'll get a lot of action. You want a horror film? You get characters like The Undertaker, like Kane, like even the Great Khali to some extent, where they feel like horror movie villains. Or even now, on WWE right now, you have The Fiend Bray Wyatt, whose mask was designed by one of the most influential horror movie designers out there. And beyond that, he still used to be a cult leader of his own family, the Wyatt family. And this entire story of him and Braun has been, come back to me and become a part of my family. Become my black sheep of the family again. Because the other two members of his family are already gone. They're out of the company. That, to me, is seen as horror. Horror action, sure, but horror. You want comedy? Take your pick. Between Colt Cabana, Orange Cassidy, some older ones like Santino Marella, and maybe even, I don't know, kind of Roddy Piper, kind of, depending on what time period, he was kind of comedy, kind of action. You have a ton of options for comedy wrestling is what I'm trying to get at. You want comedy that's super absurd and super sexual for whatever reason because that's what they like doing. Dramatic Dream Team in Japan is really... How do I put it? How do I put it in the best way possible? What DDT is? Because it is probably the hardest thing to explain about wrestling in general. It is almost its own form of wrestling where take what I've said about how stupid and bad wrestling is, increase it by about 250%, and get rid of everything that was good about it. You are left with nothing but bad stuff that is quote-unquote topped by some actually good wrestlers. That's what DDT is. It is your show to sit down, turn your brain off, and laugh. Instead of, oh, I need to focus on these storylines and all this stuff. Oh, this guy has this guy has this, this guy has this guy has this, this guy has this. It's like thinking wrestling is a game of risk of what territories people have. Like, that's the best way I can compare it. A lot of wrestling is like a game of risk in where you're having to focus on what storylines are going, where they're going, where they can connect to, while DDT is like Jenga. It's legitimately one piece being pulled out away from completely falling apart and dying as a promotion, and you're just laughing to see them very shakily move out pieces and put them back on top, thinking that they'll actually survive. It is the best comparison I can think of to DDT because DDT is incomparable because it's so stupid. There's too much going on in that promotion to even like realistically try to follow it. How many years you'd have to go back to follow storylines to nowadays is, to me, impossible. Not because you don't have the time. I think people would have the time to do it. It's because people don't want to. And why would you? Why would you want to go back for years to watch this promotion that's already bad and suffer through it when you could just start watching now, realize it's bad, and roll with it? That's what DDT is. That's what a lot of wrestling is. You have to realize how bad it is and just be like, yes, I want to watch this. You know, I know, I just thought of a better example. I thought of a much better example, actually. DDT is and I really hope some of you get this. I really hope some of you get this, because I think it is the best comparison I could think of. It's a homoerotic Trailer Park Boys. That's what DDT is. If you know Trailer Park Boys, just turn it up a little more sexual, and you have it. You have DDT as a promotion. It's baffling to think about, but it's funny. It's funny to watch because you're getting all these stupid things. And obviously there's some guys who are taken completely seriously, who are meant to be completely non-funny, just meant to be wrestlers. But then you have guys like Danshoku Dino or who is it? Senshiro Takagi, where there have just been so much stupidity. There's a wrestler in DDT who in the middle of a match will start doing a PowerPoint presentation. And because of how stupid the promotion is, there are some wrestlers that take damage from the PowerPoint presentation. Something so stupid that you have to sit there and think, what the heck is going on? And it works because it's contained in this stupid bubble of not wanting to watch it, but almost forcing yourself to watch it to see how bad it gets. It is a car crash in slow motion that you have to watch to see, to believe that these amount of people can put on such a train wreck that it is captivating in its own way. That is what that promotion is. But again, that's what a lot of wrestling is, and that's what makes me like it. I like watching stupid things. I will fully admit that. If I didn't like watching stupid things, I wouldn't watch wrestling. I probably wouldn't watch a lot of the stuff I do watch. I would watch Walking Dead and Game of Thrones because, I'm going to be real, that stuff's boring. And if you disagree with me, awesome. I'm happy you do. Because I'm not calling you boring necessarily. I am calling the shows boring because that's what it feels to me. To you, you probably see wrestling as boring. And that is perfectly fine. That's what I want. I want people who watch this to see wrestling as really bad and stupid, so I can confirm to them that, yes, wrestling is really bad and stupid. Don't get me wrong, it absolutely is. But there's also a difference. Sorry about that. There's also a difference that it's not as bad as stupid in the aspects you think it is. It's bad and stupid in a good way. Best way I could describe wrestling. But for me, how did I really get into it? Because I haven't gone over that much. I kind of went on these long-winded tangents. That's what I usually do. Get ready for that, by the way. How did I really get into wrestling is a tough question and really goes to a local promotion called Northeast Wrestling. And goes to this. This binder contains way too many 8x10s and even some trading cards, some smaller photos, whatever, of wrestlers who I have met in person because of the wonders that is indie wrestling. Indie wrestling, for those that don't know, is a term used for promotions that do not have a TV deal or are generally seen as smaller than WWE and AEW. For example, Northeast Wrestling runs shows, as far as I know, from about Massachusetts up down to Ohio. Usually are spanning tri-state to New England area, a little bit of spillover into that Ohioan area. Or maybe Virginia or something like that. But indie wrestling is really what has helped me define who I am and what wrestlers I like. Because there's a lot of these guys I wouldn't know about without indie wrestling. And for example, I'm trying to look through, and of course I'm not doing it too well, trying to look through to find some wrestlers who through indie wrestling are really how I found. I finally get one. Robbie E., former TNA wrestler, now in the WWE as Robert Stone on NXT, or I believe it's, Robert Stone. But it really was Northeast Wrestling that I found out about him and how much I like him. Because looking back, it's like, oh, apparently I saw him back in 2006, 2007, didn't realize it. Okay, cool. See how much he's advanced from there. That's sweet. But that's not the only thing indie wrestling's good for. It's also great for meeting legends that you would never be able to meet otherwise. Jerry the King Lawler, probably one of the most infamous legends in the business. One of the most well-known of all time. The guy who ran Memphis wrestling into a juggernaut in the 70s and 80s, even into the 90s for a little bit. And I got to meet him. But one man, I think, really stands above them all in terms of the big names. Because, like, I could sit here and say proudly, I've met Rey Mysterio, Cody Rhodes, John Morrison, Jake Roberts, Bob Orton Sr. I have a bunch of people who I met. But while they're nice and great photos for a collection, this one's a bit different. I don't know if you could see it that well. My fault for not really thinking this through. But the photo I'm holding is of a wrestler known as Christian Cage, or in WWE just by Christian. He was a major name in the 90s, teaming up with previously mentioned Edge as the team aptly named Edge and Christian. And in the 90s to early 2000s, he was seen by the WWE as a tag team and mid-card guy. Seen as a minor player, he would get occasional runs here and there with the IC title, maybe get a few pushes, but never enough that it would actually matter. But then he left WWE and joined TNA, and that's when he got a chance. He became the TNA, at the time NWA, heavyweight champion of the world, beating Jeff Jarrett at Against All Odds 2006 for the NWA TNA World Heavyweight Championship. And it was while he held that title that I met Christian Cage. If I had the right show, it was at a Northeast Wrestling event in Bristol, Connecticut on April 21st, 2006, predating the release of the WrestleMania 22 DVD by about a month. The show itself, I don't remember. I was maybe, 4, 5? Of course I'm not going to remember. 5 or 6, rather. Of course I'm not going to remember, because I'm not one of those people with the greatest memories in the world where they can remark exact details because they were either lucky enough to be born with it or got hit on the head one day and it knocked something into them. I'm not joking about that. That's a real thing where you can get hit on the head and suddenly have perfect memory. Don't try it. But it was one moment that I remember, which was Christian Cage defending the NWA World Heavyweight Championship against Samoa Joe. And Kurt Angle was at that show at the time as a meet and greet exclusive. From what I can tell, it was about a few months before he leaves. No, it wouldn't have been that show then. I just thought of this. It wouldn't have been that show because he would have been in WWE. But I would definitely remember Christian defending that title against Samoa Joe on the card. And Kurt Angle was there for meet and greet, or for some reason, because Joe, Christian, and Angle were all there for meet and greets, along with Jay Lethal and Ric Flair. And now I'm getting the feeling this is 2008, and I feel stupid for researching the wrong show. But to go on from it, I remember meeting Christian and being starstruck that he let me, for a photo, hold up the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. I believe they call it the 12 pounds of gold, was in my hands as this young guy who obviously had never held a championship before. Not a real championship. I held those like foam ones you got at Toys R Us. Like that was the closest I got. But to hold a real title? Insane. But even more insane was that I decided it would be smart to walk away with the title. When he gave it to me, something in my head apparently went, this is mine now. So I walked away from his little table with the title. And back then, from what I know, they didn't have the extra people around to take the photos for you or to collect the money. It was the wrestlers themselves who collected it. So I walked away with the title, and Christian laughs and is going like, and calling me back. My dad's trying to tell me, I was like, hey, that's not yours. You have to give it back. And I remember running through my head this one line that I will always remember was, man, if it was that easy to get that title, I would have done it months ago. And it was Kurt Angle who said it. Kurt Angle said that. And to some people, they probably viewed it as nothing. They thought, oh, he's making a bit of fun about the title, yeah. But to me, as somebody who already was a fan of TNA and already was a fan of both of those guys, it was storytelling. It was Angle in a very short and very stupid way going, I'm desperate enough for the title, I would have a kid, probably be paid off because it's Kurt Angle, to walk out with the title and give it to me. Whereas Christian is the guy kind enough to give the title to that kid who Angle paid off to take a photo with it. And it's a story. Is it anything that'll ever go down in the history books? No. Is it anything that they probably remember? No. I highly doubt either Angle or Christian, and I doubt they watched the show even more, would remember that was a thing that happened. But if I ever meet them again, if I ever get to talk to them, if I ever get to sit down and I remember that moment, I'm going to ask them. And whether they lie or tell the truth, I won't know, and I really won't care. But for a moment, I'll feel young again. I will feel... I'll feel like more storytelling was given to that time in wrestling. Again, it was something so stupid, something so mundane, so idiotic, so many words to describe it, but to me it was awesome because I felt like I was part of the story. I mean, that was also the meet and greet. I met a few other people who I really liked. One of them, I believe it was the same show. One of them I can't mention on here because it's I didn't. No, I can't even say that. I was young and stupid and naive. I will put it that way. I was young and stupid and naive, but that's kind of the message about this show entirely. Is whenever I tell a story, usually it's going to start with, I was young, stupid, and naive, and then get into what I did to screw up. But hey, that's a lot of wrestling. A lot of wrestling is young, stupid, and naive. It's, hey, let's push the boundaries of how stupid we can go, and then stop right at the line so it doesn't break immersion. And it's why I love wrestling. And it's why I'm hosting this, because I hope more people see wrestling and go, instead of, oh, well, this is fake, why am I going to watch it? They'll see it and say, this is stupid. Let's see how stupid it can get. I'm not exactly saying, oh, everyone should go down the rabbit hole of YouTubes and Dailymotion and Vimeo and everything else and find the worst wrestling has to offer, because you're going to find some bad stuff. If you're specifically looking for the worst of wrestling, they don't know that you mean the worst of the best. They think you mean the worst of the worst. You're going to find bad stuff. You're going to find things that aren't even technically wrestling but happen to wrestlers. You're going to find stories. You're going to find horrible, horrible things, potentially crimes involving and regarding wrestling that no person should have to remember or go through. And a lot of the people involved in wrestling over the years have died because that's the nature of this business. It's not like football and the NBA where they're built for 5-10 years at most. Wrestlers are built to go. They're like almost cars in a way. They're built to go. And depending on where you are and depending on what region of the world, built to go could mean 5 years and it could mean 50. But just like with cars, wrestlers do die, and it's a shame to see. I mean, Lord knows I've shed plenty of tears over what wrestlers I've had to read the news of that they passed away. Dusty Rhodes, I think, was the one that hit me the hardest, because I remember the exact day I was seeing that news. I was in a chat room with 4 other people before Discord existed and before a lot of other social media was a thing I could use. It was on Chatsy. If you remember that, good for you. I was in Chatsy playing Extreme Warfare Revenge with 4 other people, and seeing the news that Dusty Rhodes passed away broke me. Because Dusty was a guy who I looked up to, not because of his ability, but because of his body type. He was probably one of the first truly fat wrestlers who got a world title. He was the American dream for a reason, and I will miss him greatly for what he's done and for what he set up. But regardless, I still love wrestling. I hate it a lot. I think it's stupid most of the time, but when there's sometimes that it isn't stupid, it makes me happy. It makes me happy to know that wrestling is a thing that works. Almost as a man, I don't know where I was going with this. I went super serious there, and then decided, you know what, I'm gonna lose my train of thought immediately after. Genius. But for the time being, I think that is all the time that I got. I am happy I got to share my experiences of wrestling with you all. I'm happy that I'm going to be able to do this show, and I'm happy that I have this platform to address how much I love wrestling. And regardless of how much I bash it, regardless of how much I say this is stupid, this sucks, this is bad, this is boring, this is anything at all, know that I will always love it, and that I only say it is bad because I know it can be better. Wrestling has always shown potential to become better than it really is. All it needs is a few sparks and a few of the right actors who give a damn, hopefully I'm allowed to say that, about wrestling. To build the right thing. Anyways, thank you so much for all watching, and hopefully you enjoyed my ranting, enjoyed hearing about some of the craziness that wrestling has seen, and hey, maybe I've convinced you to go online and even go on TV and watch some professional wrestling so you yourself can see just how crazy this business can be. Once again, I am Simon Haley Jr. I am hopefully your host, and hopefully in the next few episodes I get more people on here, whether it be through Zoom/Discord, or whether it be potentially interviewing real wrestlers. It's all stuff that I want to do, but I need a fan base first. So stick around and enjoy some more suplexes and slams.